Hello friends, and welcome to this new course. In this course we will talk about the database and Flutter. We will not talk about teaching how to develop a Flutter application, absolutely not. We will just talk about the database and the options of the databases, APIs that are available right now that we can use with our Flutter application. Now first of all, let me make this statement. My review here doesn't underestimate or undervalue or undermine the great job and the great work of these people who are doing these database APIs. Absolutely not. My aim here in this valuation is to pinpoint where and highlight where we can improve these databases so that these people, these great developers who are giving all this attention and this dedication to develop for us these APIs, the database APIs, so they can give us even a better database APIs. I just wanted to say this statement. So let's go with it. Now the first one that we will talk about is that what are the things that we need to evaluate when we do any evaluation to a database API. In my opinion, these are these 5 things, which is the security, the installation, the performance, maintainability, and the price finally. I started with the security because it's the most important thing, obviously. Does the database API give us the option to encrypt fully the database cluster, or give us the option to encrypt partially the database cluster? And also, does this API, the database API, give us the security of securing the connection between the client and the server, implementing the SSL or implementing the TLS? Does this database API do these 2 things, encrypt the database completely or partially, secure the connection between the client and the server with SSL or TLS? Does this API give us these 2 things? Because the security is a very fundamental and important thing we need to notice. Now the second thing is that we need to notice the installation. Now some APIs, database APIs, it's very easy to install. Even a guy who's not professional with database or not professional with the operating systems can install it. And there are some database APIs which must require that you take the assistance of a professional guy to handle for you the installation of that database in your system. So this is a very important point we need also to take in consideration, because it costs, sometimes it can cost money. Now as for the performance, we will take a look at the speed of executing the DDLs, whether it's a select query, whether insert or update queries. We will see how fast these database APIs can perform these DDL operations on the database. And as same with some other issue for the performance, just like can this database API provide us with let's say a replication, backup, some other things that we require when we use any database? As for the performance, what are the types that are supported with this database API? Does this API support, let's say, the blob, the binary large object type? Does this database API support the serial, which is auto increment? So all these things we need to, we will take a look at when we do an evaluation for any database API. The other thing, the number 4, which is the maintainability. Now some database APIs, a group of team appreciated, they grouped themselves and they developed one API, but for many reasons they couldn't carry on with this work for a long time. So that API remained unupdated, both in performance, both in security. while other API, let's say, the team had funds to carry on with updating this API, database API. So we need to look which one is which API is still being updated, and the team of who's responsible for this API is still updating the API, both in terms of security and in the performance of the API. And lastly, we need to take a look at the price, obviously, because for an individual probably this wouldn't matter, but for big corporates, price is very a big factor when you decide to choose any API for database. Accordingly, these 5 things we will apply when I was doing this review about the database APIs that we can implement with the Flutter application. Again, I need to highlight again that this evaluation doesn't underestimate or undermine or undervalue the great efforts of the people who are developing these APIs. I highly appreciate for them their dedication, their time, their efforts to give us these APIs. So this review is just to highlight the points that we may need to give a more attention to it, so we can improve them and make these APIs even better and better. Now the first API is obviously the Firestore by Google. In terms of security, installation, performance, maintainability, these 4 points are no need to worry about. Obviously this is Google, and they have all the capabilities to keep these things, but on point number 5, which is the price. Now here is a tricky thing. If you are a small company, a small installation with users and clients which have limited request connections on your database, so let's say that you have 10, 20, maybe 30 clients which have a limited request to update or insert or request data from your database, then in this case, yes, Firebase is your target. Firebase is your goal, because in this case you almost paying very a small amount, which is almost absolutely nothing. If your company, if your installation is a small and your client is less, but if your company is big, and if you are a big corporate and you have hundreds or thousands of clients who are constantly, daily request data from your database, inserting, updating, pulling data, in this case, no, you have to prepare yourself for a big amount that you need to pay every month. But you will get, your clients obviously will be satisfied for the performance of your application. So it's this is the trade-off between the cost that you have to pay and the client's acceptance of your application. The second API, which is the Sqlite, which is very familiar with all people. In terms of security, it's of course has a good security because it's maintained by I believe MySQL. The maintainability, I have no issue. The price is almost free, except for 2 things, which is the installation. It requires a good knowledge. Maybe you need someone who is a professional to do the installation, because Sqlite usually deal directly with the application. It's like an embedded database, so you need some knowledge, a good knowledge. Probably you need a professional guy to handle these things for you. As for the performance, it's well known that the performance of Sqlite is very much lower and cannot be compared to any other database, especially like Firebase or MySQL or Postgres. So this is a trade-off. It's almost very small footprint on your application, on your process. It will not take much of your resources, of your mobile or smartphone resources, but on the other hand, the performance of the database is less than any other database API. Now I'm not going to go in detail for these two, Firebase or the Sqlite. I will focus on the APIs, database APIs that we're going to get from the pub.dev, which belongs to the Google as well. These are the developers who are developing for us these APIs for multiple things, among of which for databases. Here again I thank them and appreciate their work and their dedication to give us these APIs. We will focus on the MySQL and the Postgres, and we will apply these 5 things on each of the MySQL and the Postgres. In terms of the installation, as I have checked with the installation of these APIs is very easy. In your application, you just go take a link, put it in your pubspec.yaml file which is in your application. That's it. Voila, you can use that API. The price, I believe all of them are free, so these are 2 things good. Now in terms of the security, as we have said, we will look into, does this API encrypt fully or partially the database, and does this API give us the ability to secure the connection between the client and the server using SSL or TLS. Does this API do these 2 things? If it does, then good. If it doesn't, then it's not good. From my dealing with these APIs, the majority of them doesn't give you this high level of security. Of course, hopefully they will do much better. They will give much focus on these points of the security, so we can use them even more and more. In terms of the performance is varying between these APIs, and even the using of the types. Some of them doesn't use all the types, some of them use some of them, and some of them only give you a select query and an insert query without update and delete. Some of them give you select, insert, update without delete. So these differences between the performances are available. Now as per the maintainability, I believe most of them are individuals who are grouped to do these APIs, so they need more funding, they need more support, so their APIs can last longer and get better. I have tried in myself these APIs in my application, in my when I'm doing my Flutter application. I tried the MySQL and the Postgres, both of them, and these are my observations. I tried for the MySQL this API MySQL 1, and I tried the Fluent Query Builder. These 2 do with the MySQL up to version 7.5. Why? Because in version 8, as you can see in this link, in version 8 up to version 7.5, the security of the transferring the data from the client to the server is very weak using MySQL, very weak, and any hacker can access to it and compromise the data that coming back and forth between the client and the server. But as of version 8, MySQL version 8, this thing has been changed totally. Now they are applying the TLS connection between the client and the server, but this thing, what it does, it changed totally the connection between the connection queries, or the connection code between the client and the server. So now with version 8, the connection must be using an SSL. It must. Even with up to 7.5, it wasn't a necessity that you have an SSL connection prior to do any connection. But in version 8, it is now a must that you have a secure connection, an SSL connection, which will apply, of course, the certificate from the the CAs. Now the server should have the CA, the client should have the CA. So this is the major improvement that happened with the MySQL 8. Accordingly, all these APIs will not be valid, as at least so far, at least till this point, till now, with using MySQL 8. Probably in the future they will improve it, and it will be available also for MySQL 8. But so far, until now, these two that I've tried is not compatible with MySQL version 8. Now, these are the Postgres that I have tried, the PostgreSQL APIs, which is Postgres 2, Fluent Query Builder, and PostgreSQL Pool, Postgres Pool. Now, due to this thing of the MySQL, I shifted to Postgres. This is the reason why I left MySQL, using MySQL with my applications, with my Flutter applications. But the goal of this course is that we need to apply either a Postgres or a MySQL, either a fully encrypted PostgreSQL cluster of databases with SSL connection from customized package, or at least a partially encrypted PostgreSQL cluster of databases with SSL connection from pre-compiled package, either on PostgreSQL, or we can go with MySQL, whether it's an up to version 5.7, which is a weak unsecure connection between client and the server, or we can go with the version 8, which is secure with the TLS as a connection between the client and the server. This is what we will do in this course, starting with the Postgres, and then we will see about MySQL. This is the entire description of this course. I hope you will get some benefit out of it. I thank you very much.